On this episode, we are joined by Bart Lundy, head men's basketball coach at the University of Wisconsin Milwaukee. We talked to Coach Lundy about being a head coach at 25, improving player academics, Division II basketball, and much more. As always, thank you for listening to the After the Timeout podcast.
All right, Coach. So we like to start every episode with the opening tip. For you, we wanted to start off for when you were an assistant and you were, those first few years and you're preparing for that first head coaching job, whether it was at Winthrop or Queens. And then, what were some things you kind of prepared for before you were a head coach for the first time?
I became a head coach. I was still 25. So I don't know that how I was preparing to be a head coach. I was recruiting players, and when I was at Winthrop, I was the restricted earnings coach. If you guys remember that position years ago, which I was very restricted, and I actually made more money off of the class action lawsuit than I did when I was actually working there, which still wasn't much. But I was 25, and the guy I was working for was really good coach, Dale Lair, left and went to Colorado State, and I was already losing my hair, so they didn't know. I don't think they knew exactly how old I was. So that first year, I was on double secret interim probation as head coach, and I think we won 25 games, and they hadn't had any choice but to keep me. But really, that first time, I was just holding on for dear life. I thought I knew stuff, but it was, I threw my best player out of the very first practice I ever had. I look back at that guy. I was probably just crazy enough to pull it off, but way different now. And so, yeah, I'd like to tell you that I had all these intricate preparations that I did, but luckily I'd done some good recruiting as an assistant and had good players that helped me through it.
Well, and then the second part, Todd and I kind of wanted to follow up. So, you were a head coach, and then you kind of went back to be an assistant at both Marquette and North Texas, which we'll talk about those experiences later. But was there anything you learned that second time around as an assistant that, when you became a head coach again, you might have done differently or changed, or something that you learned that made you feel better as a head coach? Kind of maybe what did you learn from those experiences?
Yeah, I would say that the second time around, I was completely different. The fact that I got a head coaching job when I was 25 was a blessing and a curse. Obviously everybody wants a chance and it's an opportunity, and I wouldn't change that for anything. But there were a lot of things I didn't understand. And I was a Division II player, and then Winthrop was a low Division I, but then Division II assistant. And then I got the High Point job at 31, which is Division I head coaching job. And I knew the basketball part. I was fine with that, and really the recruiting, but all the other stuff that swirls around being a head coach, I struggled with. And going to Marquette and especially watching Buzz, how Buzz handled all the other stuff, off the court, and how he handled the players too. I was still in the mode of, hey, I'm the coach, you're the player, you do what I say. The kind of old school way of thinking. But then watching him with the alumni and the boosters, and I always tell people about the narrative coming out of his program. The messages that go out, he scripts, and he knows, what he wants that to look like. And I think when I was an early young head coach, I just thought, hey, I'm gonna go win games and that'll be enough. But in today's world, that's not enough. It's much more than that. And those are really the things that I learned.
All right, so I want to take it to recruiting here. You've recruited all over, very different areas, very different places. Um, so maybe what are some of the similarities wherever you're recruiting, and then maybe how do you adjust to each area? Is there certain things in each area that kids are looking for, or do you have to talk about different things? Um, in each area, because obviously Wisconsin's different than Texas and wherever it may be.
Yeah, and I'm just now really when I was at Marquette, I didn't do a lot of recruiting in Wisconsin. So I'm really getting to know the lay of the land here in the state. But I think each place is different. When you're in Texas, you can go to a different gym every day and see and see a good player, and a lot of times a player nobody knows about. And they've got these activity, it's all fueled by football, but they've got these activity periods. So you can literally bounce to 4 or 5 high schools in a day and see their 4 or 5 kids play. So the recruiting there is kind of endless. I always tell people, the North Carolina, I think, I had grown up, in the state and, played for half the coaches and know all the players. And but there are the more high school kids in the city of Houston than in the state of North Carolina, if you can process that. So just being into Houston, like if you want to get into Houston, like that's a whole deal. You gotta say I'm a recruit Houston or I'm not, because it's so big. And then I get up here to Wisconsin, and there's not the volume of players, but man, you got these kids that are up in the middle of nowhere, up, coming out of to me, like an igloo, and they can ball, but you got to get up there and find them. So, very, very different. And, obviously each place is a different sell. I'm learning, what kind of kid likes Milwaukee. It's a city school. It's, 24,000 students. That sounds good, but it's not for everybody. So, each place is a different sell as well.
So that perfect lead into my second part of that question. Kind of what goes into making a player eventually, make that final decision. Hey, this is my home. Um, you know, as well as not basketball, but outside of the basketball program too, right? Having them have that sense of community and feel like this is the place I really want to be.
Yeah, I think in my experience, kids know, when they're on their visit, they know whether this is the place for them. We've had guys come, and and I've done 21 official visits in the last 5 months, so I can tell you how they roll. How they roll, and obviously, how they get along with the staff, the style of play, facilities. But then it does come down a lot of times to, okay, I want to be in sports management. I want to be in a city. I want to be in a city that's got the NBA, that's got Major League Baseball, or I'm more, I'm from a smaller place. I don't know if I really like the city, and that's good. I think the way we do it, we open it up. We tell them we're an open book, and I only want you to come here if you really feel it, in your heart, and this is what you want. So there's not a lot of pressure here. There's not, everybody does it differently, and they throw out offers and they heat kids up and try to get them to pop and hear all those words like, "Hey man, come here if you want. If you don't feel like this is the place for you, then don't come here." We'll find players. It's okay. But you think about it, and the enormity of that decision, you're probably going to end up living there or somewhere close to there when you're done. There's a good chance you might meet your wife. There's a good chance that's going to spur on a job after basketball. So it's such an enormous decision that, at least my approach is, I want to give them the space to come and figure it out for themselves.
So we haven't not talked about this topic with really any other collegiate coach we've had on, but something we noticed when we did our homework on you and your programs is, you've consistently had team GPAs over 3.0 multiple times, no matter where your stops were. So just to start off with this question, what are some things you and your staff do to motivate, monitor, and encourage your teams to do so well in their classes?
Yeah, I think the first part of it is you have to always keep in mind that that's your mission. Your mission is to get these guys degrees. And I just literally yesterday typed an email AD because they were talking about this and that and admissions, and but I think some of my biggest successes as a coach are the kids that not one person in their family, their first generation kids in college, and nobody in their family's ever graduated, and they graduate and they change the trajectory of their not only themselves but their entire family, and can be for generations. And so I think when you keep that in mind first and foremost when you're establishing your program, it becomes easy to put that structure in. And our structure is really simple. Right now we don't have guys, because we have a lot of classes, a lot of students. Our guys don't start class until 10, which is really nice for them. We have a couple in 8 and 9s, but for the most part at 10. So they come in and they have breakfast at 8:30, and they have breakfast, and then they go straight to study hall. And then we make them, for the week, they have all their tasks. And we do a common sense approach to study hall where, all right, these are your tasks, and our work week is Sunday to Sunday. You're gonna get all your stuff done, and as soon as you're done with all your work through the next Sunday, then you can stop coming to the study hall, whether that's on Monday or whether that's 2 weeks ago we had some guys that were messing around and had like 4 guys that hadn't finished. So I just made the whole team do study hall on Saturday morning, So it takes some discipline. Each of our coaches has, 3 or 4 guys that they follow. And we do have an academic full-time person here in the athletic department that works with our team. But a lot of times those folks are, 9 to 5, and, you and I both know it takes more than that to get their stuff done. So it's just really just making sure it's an emphasis. It's like anything else that we do as coaches. Whatever you emphasize, you're gonna be successful at. And I think at least in college, we have set a bad precedent. This APR stuff. It's because we didn't graduate our players. Plain and simple. We can blame everybody else, but we weren't graduating our players. And I think that's a travesty for a kid to go 4 years to college and then walk away from his career and not have his degree. That's complete failure. And it's not a failure of the kid, it's the failure of the program. And I don't ever want to be in that position.
And then maybe just what are maybe 1 or 2 things that you would say to even maybe just a high school coach who may not have all those resources, academic advisors and such, and multiple assistants. What would you maybe say to a high school coach, as we have a lot that listen, about, how to just encourage your kids to get the grades?
Yeah, I don't have a better way to put it other than guys who want to play. The only thing leverage that you have is ball. And as hard as it is, I have a kid who, we tier our guys. We have some guys we don't really have to watch at all. Some guys we got to watch a little bit, and then other guys we got to, we got to hold their hand and pick the spoon up and stick it in their mouth. And I have one guy who has plenty of ability, but he doesn't love school. And I know that the only leverage I have is basketball. And it's just really simple. Hey, you if you don't get your work done, you're not practicing, and that will hurt your team. But I always think what you sacrifice to keep, you will eventually lose. So you sacrifice those little bits, practice, maybe even comes to, sacrificing a game or two with that player. But if you don't do that, you're going to sacrifice something larger. And whether you lose the player or they don't make their grades, they don't qualify for college. You have to use those things, and I don't get upset with them. I'm just like, hey, you're just not going to practice. You're just not going to practice, and you're going to have to do this study hall. You can get your work done while we're playing basketball, and when you're done with your work, you can join us. And it's pretty much as simple as that.
I love the common sense process study hall. I was the JUCO study hall supervisor for a while. That was, I'm sure
Torture.
it was interesting at times.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you kind of talked about your first time as a head coach. I'm going to tweak this question a little bit. As far as the system, right? You said the first time you're kind of like just treading water, trying to make it work. So now, right, you take over, you have that experience, you whatever stop you've made, you take over a program. What went into you creating your systems on offense and defense? What kind of things did you look at? Because I think that's a great topic for any coach, right? We've talked to multiple guests. In Illinois, there's been coaching changes left and right, taking over new team. Yeah. There's been a couple in the last week, right? Season starts a month from now. So what are the things you kind of look at initially? And then how do you ultimately decide this is what we're going to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, taking this Milwaukee job and having questions like this a lot, it's made me kind of reflect. I look back at my roots. I grew up Virginia, but then mostly in North Carolina, and I was a big Dean Smith fan, North Carolina fan. So I think I have always been kind of wed to secondary break. We call it sequence now. So I would say offensively, I've always been kind of a layers guy. We're going to run into a secondary break, and then it changes. The actions change that we use year to year and with our personnel. But then the layers always change. Now I literally didn't decide for sure what we were going to do with this team in our breakdown offense until about 3 weeks ago. Because I was trying to figure out, okay, I got 13 new players. What do we really have? What can we do well? What can our posts do? Where can I put them in the right positions? So I've done some ball screen motion. I've done the Brad Underwood, Dana Altman spread. And this year we're going to go to more of a 4-out 1-in because I think it fits what we have and what we can do. So I think it's just developed over time, but I've always had those layers. I think some guys go, all right, this is my offense and it's one layer. I've always had multiple layers. And we'll do a lot of false motion. So we may replace one layer with another layer. So it keeps you on your heels. And that's just developed over time, losing to teams, having to change tempo. I've always been pretty much, an impatient coach. So we pressure the ball, we play full court, we play fast. That's always been the same. We practice fast. And that's never changed. But what we do has evolved and morphed over time. And I do think, as you get older as a coach, it really is. And I have some coaches that are my contemporaries that I've grown up with that disagree with this. But I think you've got to kind of stay on the cutting edge as you get older, because if you don't adapt, in my mind, you perish. Now some guys are like, no, the old school ways are good. That's what I'm going to go with what I know, but I want to be a lifelong learner and really, soak in as much as I can everywhere I go.
So you kind of mentioned, working for Buzz Williams at Marquette. So just specifically, we'll just stay and I heard you speak about Buzz and his impact on you a little bit at the IBCA clinic where you spoke, but maybe for our listeners, what were some things that, you learned specifically from Buzz at Marquette that, you still use today, helped you grow, and maybe impacted you in a way that maybe is not just X's and O's or recruiting?
Yeah. Well, first thing I learned, I would say is the most impactful thing was his organization. Buzz is a meticulous note taker, and he does it differently than I do it. I use these little. I'm a pen to paper guy, and he's a calendar computer guy. But he has his logs. He can tell you what happened on this day, 6 years ago, and where the team was, and what he documents his notes and his thoughts, and I really took a lot of that from him. And now I've got sitting on my desk now where I do my practice plan. I've got 4 different years that I think are similar to the team that I have now. And where were we and what were we doing 3 years ago with that team that I think is similar to this team? Where were we stumbling? What was good? What was bad? I'll go back, and I've got red pens on my desk, and I'll make notes in red after practice, so I know what happened in the practice. And then just being able to reflect and have knowledge that you can gain from what happened, so you're not reinventing the wheel all the time. He's unbelievable with that. And then how he had relationships with the players, because when I first got there, I thought, oh wow, you can't push players this far. I thought I pushed players, man. He is getting it all out of them and soaking it out and then wringing it out, and and he pushed those guys hard. I mean, I might have said it at the clinic. Jimmy Butler, obviously is Jimmy Butler and has earned everything himself. But I don't know that there's a Jimmy Butler without a Buzz Williams. He taught Jimmy how to work and pushed him beyond what Jimmy thought he could do. Jay Crowder, same thing. And those guys embraced that and became that. And now that's who they are in the NBA. But it wasn't just that he pushed them. He had a relationship on the backside. What you don't see about Buzz is he's coaching them, and then at night he's texting them, and he's talking to them, and he's sending them little love letters. And so the love, and then the hard love on the court, was something that was really, really good for me to see. And then we already touched on it a little bit, how he dealt with the program, how he dealt with media, how he dealt with, social media, how he dealt with the boosters and the administration. And, that was eye-opening for me. So, all the stuff outside of just the X's and O's, and he's a master at it. So, those 3 years, learning from Buzz, and then being in the Big East at that time, and how good the Big East was, it was kind of like a PhD in college basketball. It was really good for me at that time in my life.
So just popped up a follow-up question. You talked about the outside stuff. And I think, just based on that's what gets a lot of coaches, right? They're like, they
Yeah.
want to pitch ball, and you got all this other outside stuff. Me and John talk about it all the time. Like, most of it's the outside stuff. Like the X's and O's part's easy. So maybe, for some of the high school coaches and even us, like, let's be honest, I could learn, right? Like, what are some of those things you learn from that? And what are some of those things you do with that outside stuff to kind of, I shouldn't say make it more manageable, but like, have a focus on those things, but yet you coach basketball and not let those things get too overwhelming.
Yeah. I think, sometimes you just got to go through it and make those mistakes. But what I would tell coaches is this: if you're doing right, if you're doing right in your heart, you just got to ignore all the outside stuff. You've got to be nice and deal with, the parents and boosters and, do the song and dance and all that. But if you're doing right in your heart, stick to your guns and, don't let people, everybody's got an opinion on what you should be doing. And I think that's where you go wrong. You follow, you're the one that's in the guts of it every single day. And I told my athletic director this just yesterday, I'm hired to do a job. Trust me to do the job. It will be better than fine. Just let me do my job, because I've gone down the road of, hey, maybe we should do it this way. And, you get confused and you get down, and then, what happens to some coaches, and I've been there too, you lose a couple of games and you doubt where you're going with things. Sometimes you just got to push through, you got to stay the course. And then, the thing that Buzz did so well is, he celebrated. I think a good way to do is he celebrated all our little victories, and he celebrated them not only with the team, but he let the world know. I thought that, before I got to Marquette, I thought the victories we get on the court are enough. No, the victories when some kid passes a test and makes an A, and, when we had boot camp and somebody's MVP of boot camp or whatever it is, you control the narrative and you put good stuff out in the world, let people know what you're doing. Because most people have no idea what we do every day. They just see the games and that's it. I mean, sometimes it's, you let them know a loss. We had a setback. But you control that narrative, you let people know. And, just that constant communication, and social media is good for coaches if they do it right, because you can let people know without actually having to sit down and talk to them. This is what's going on, and this is my view on it. Don't tweet back at me.
So you actually mentioned just momentarily, you mentioned Jimmy Butler and Jay Crowder, and just doing my homework, and whether it was even at Queens when you coached some guys that went on to the professional level, you've obviously coached a lot of great players. For you, and this is another question we really haven't hit too much on with other coaches, but what outside characteristics, maybe outside of just pure talent, do you see in those kind of kids? Like those couple common characteristics that you just see in those kids that are, sure, they're talented, but there's also something a little extra about them. What do you think makes up that little extra hunger, or a little extra, whatever you think it is, that separates the good from the great?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say when you get to that level, it's, in my opinion, it's two things. One, it's toughness and the ability to stay focused and work to a high level and do it over and over and over and over. What people don't understand is, and I used to send my players at Queens, I try to get them over with the Hornets so they could see the way Kemba Walker would live his life. He's eating breakfast. They've got food there. He's fueling his body. He is getting shots. He's watching film. And this is day after day after day, because, when you get to that level, like this is what they do, for a living. It's not, I think that people have the perception that they just show up and they're good players. Like they are good players, but they're grinding it. And, like guys like Jimmy and Jay have that capacity to do it over and over for long periods of time, where other people stopped, they could keep going. And then I do think that there is a level of processing that those elite guys have, and you can see it at all different levels. You can see it in the high school level. You've got a kid who, he might not even be as talented, but he can process, and those guys process at a high level. Like when I watch Jay play right now, his ability to be shot ready. And then if he's not open to move the ball to the right place and process that at such a high level is instantaneous. And that's so valuable in the NBA, and it's so hard to find. So I think those two things, and those are great examples because literally neither of those guys were anything in high school. Jimmy was like 97th in the state of Texas. It was his state ranking. And I'm not even sure Jay was ranked. He was ranked as a quarterback in football, but I'm not sure he was even ranked as a basketball player. So, those weren't the LeBrons and the guys that, you look at and say, God said this guy's an NBA player. He's 6'9", he jumps out of the gym. Those guys aren't that. They're just grinders. But I do think they process at a high level.
All right, so we're gonna go. There's a new segment called Halftime Adjustments. I'm taking liberties here. It's our halftime of our show. I'm gonna talk more end of game stuff here. So, just kind of give you a situation or general situation, see kind of how you think about it. So you're coming down to the end of the game. Maybe you're down a couple possessions. The decision-making process of, okay, when do we start fouling? When we start pressing, are we shooting twos or threes? Is that more for you analytics based? Is it more field based? Whatever, kind of how that end of game process goes, where you're like, okay, maybe we should start fouling here, or we got to shoot a three here, whatever it may be.
Well, I will preface this to say that we pick up 94 feet and we pressure the ball constantly. So I am not a big proponent of fouling until I absolutely have to. And that is late.
Yeah.
Late.
Your system, you're trying to get steals and pressure.
Yeah. And hopefully, it's been 40 minutes of zigzags and, you hope they're tired, and they're ready to make mistakes. So I've had more success pressuring the ball without fouling and then letting the other team make mistakes than I have fouling and hoping that they miss a shot. And then we shoot a lot of threes, but late in the game, we will not shoot a three until it is under 10 seconds. And we have to, mathematically, we can't get back in the game unless we shoot a three. We're going to go to the rim. We're going to get twos and relentlessly try to get twos and then pressure you until we're back in the game.
Or getting off the clock.
And I've had tons. Yeah. Now, if it's under 10 seconds, you're down three. You don't think you have enough time to get a second possession. Like you gotta take a chance on a three. But we will relentlessly go to the rim. And I drill that into our guys. Like a similar situation is late in the shot clock. We don't ever just shoot a three. Let's go one-on-one and shoot a pull-up. Like if we get late in the clock, I tell them we're either going to go to the rim, get a paint touch, and get a shot that way, or I'd rather them just kick it out of bounds and let us set our defense. Is that those long shots? I think they're killers late in the game, and maybe you wanted a more technical answer here, but
that's perfect.
I think those threes are just it's a wish and a prayer, and you're just waiting to lose.
Well, and those long shots don't necessarily in your system let you set up your pressure, right? Like get a shot there out running, and you can't really pressure that, and then you almost have to foul, right? If you're
exactly.
So Todd and I, we've talked a lot to coaches about, coaches that have had sustained winning, and obviously you have had sustained winning. You're something, I think we looked up, something like 433 and 198 as a head coach. But we noticed one year in particular, we wanted to ask you about, and it was your year at High Point. You were 9-21. And for someone that does have an immense amount of winning, a sustained amount of success, what are things that you learned maybe about yourself and, maybe about the team, but more about yourself as a coach in that 9-21 year that you still kind of take today?
Yeah, this kind of goes back to your previous question. Like, when you go through those things, you've got those outside voices telling you to do things, and you make those mistakes as a coach. So we had High Point was it's a way different job now, but when I got it, they had just gone through the Division I transition. We really couldn't even show the dorms. It was one of the worst jobs, Division I jobs in the country, and we had pretty good success for a few years, and we had sprinkled junior college, some transfers, and high school kids all together. I had an athletic director that kind of got into my ear and said, well, maybe we should just be high school kids. And we cycled out a really good class. The year before that, we were picked to win league, and had a couple of untimely injuries, and we didn't end up winning the league. So I recruited 9 freshmen on that last team. So I had a win for each freshman on the team, and I learned pretty quickly that having 9 freshmen on your team is really difficult to win in college basketball, no matter what you do. And so subsequently, that AD was fired that summer before that year. New AD comes in. I have really my first bad year, and I'm fired. He basically fired all the coaches. So that's those lessons stick with me to this day. It's you can't listen to the outside voices. You got to do what you think's right. We had a formula we were following that was pretty successful. We didn't need 9 freshmen on one team. Now in today's game, that would be unheard of with the portal and all that. But back then, everybody's got an opinion, right? And we should have gotten a couple transfers and sprinkled a junior college kid in there with some experience, and who knows what happens with that team. So, that would be the lesson I learned.
All right, so I want to talk about your D2 experience a little bit. We haven't talked about it. We haven't talked to a ton of coaches who coach D2. We've been D3, D1, JUCO, whatever it may be. In Illinois, we know what kind of makes that unique. In Illinois, in this area, there's a very spread out D2, right?
Yeah.
Area. But what are some of the things that made Division II level unique in comparison to the other 2 levels?
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of a D2 guy through and through, and I love that level. It is ultra competitive. We had 10 scholarships, but you could stack the academic money on it. So I literally would have 13, 14 guys on full scholarships at Queens. So it's really talent-wise, like if you look at the talent I had there versus the talent at Milwaukee, really not a lot of difference. Now, obviously you go to the high major level, and it's those guys are those guys are different. But the basketball was the basketball, and the league and the region I was in, man, there's you're playing against really good coaches, really good teams, really good players. So the basketball part is super competitive, but there is somewhat of a purity, to it. There's not as many outside voices in these kids' head. That there's not a bunch of people that are looking at those kids and saying, I'm going to make my living on that guy because he's gonna get drafted. And you have that some everywhere, but it is more pure. It is more academic driven. I think obviously Division III, you're gonna have a lot of high level academic schools. I was very fortunate that Queens was a high level academic school, and we had resources, and we had a high level basketball program too. So to me, the level is awesome. And I love being at Milwaukee, and I hit 50, and I wanted a new challenge. But the D2 model to me you know, if there are coaches out there considering that, can't go wrong with it.
All right, so I want to move into kind of a season long thing. You know, basketball season's a long season, right? You know, at your level, you
Does
know,
it ever end?
somewhere, right? Even at high school, right? We start in,
Yeah.
you know, October, and next thing you know, it's March. You're like, oh man,
Yep.
right? So how do you help your players and assistants and even you from kind of not riding the roller coaster, getting too high, getting too low, right? Because you're gonna have that 2 game stretch where you're like, oh man, we're, you know, we're not playing well, and then you have a 3 game stretch where you're playing really well. You beat a couple really good teams. So how do you help your players and assistants and even you again not ride that roller coaster and stay kind of even keel?
Yeah. Well, I've got my answer is going to kind of, it's 2 things and they kind of butt against each other. But the first thing we do, we really do try to preach to our guys, like, we're just going to try to do today right. You know, we're going to wake up, we're going to work as hard as we can, we're going to go to bed, hopefully do things the right way that day, go to bed, wake up the next day and do it again, and stack good days on top of each other. And that's how we want to live day to day. And then not worry about, I always tell them that old people live in the past, young people live in the future, but wise people live right now. So we try not to think about what's going to happen or what did happen. Just, you know, if we lose a game, we wrap it up by midnight. If we win a game, we wrap it up by midnight, celebrate or more until midnight, and then it's gone. Leave it alone. In the last few years, what I've really tried to do too, and this kind of, it goes against that a little bit, but I've tried to focus on what's the most important part of the year. It's really those tournaments at the end, right? And I think as coaches, like, we get these guys ready and we think we got to be, you know, in the best shape, in the you know, best skills, all this when the season starts. That's really, you think about it, that's impossible. So can we really focus on being our best when it's the most important? You know, you might have a rocky season, but can you be your best, you know, in late February when that conference tournament's about to hit, when that state tournament's about to hit? You know, and for us, you know, we're in a 1 bid league. You know, it's great to win that regular season, and maybe you get the CBI or whatever the hell those things are called, you know, but everybody wants to play in that NCAA tournament. So can we be the best and our strongest and our most skilled and our most together in March? And I think if you keep that in mind, like, you can get through those hard times. And, you know, Tampa, you get a big win in December, well, that's great, but you gotta be the best when it means the most. So that's kind of how we've kind of gone about it.
Well, and you see that all the time, right? Every March, every
Yeah.
high school season, you see it all the time. So I guess my follow-up to that is then you talked about staying, you know, 1 day at a time and next day. How do you help your players kind of off the court, right? It's easier said than done, right? It's especially now, you know, you got social media, you go on Twitter and, oh, so-and-so played terrible, and, oh, they lost to this team, and, you know, or, hey, we beat whoever, you know, this high major, and you guys are awesome. So how do you go about kind of talking about that and helping players off the court to get in that mindset?
Yeah, this is going to be a bad answer. So I like to, I said this a little bit at the clinic. I like our players to feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. So we like to call ourselves a cult. Like, we are our own cult, and we really concentrate on our circle, and we have our own rituals. We do our own thing. We have our own, you know, sayings and our own language, and I really pump that up and make that important. And I do kind of put them in the mindset that it is us against the world, you know. So even when you're having success, like I'll be the first one to tell them, hey man, like enjoy that now, because that dude that wants to be your friend, like we lose a couple of games, like he ain't gonna care one thing about you. You know, your core is right here. This is who we are. These are the people who are going to be with you thick and thin, and hopefully for the rest of your life. You know, you're going to have these relationships. So I just always try to make it, as bad as that sounds, like I want our guys to value this little group we have and understand that those people and those voices on the outside, they don't mean anything to that group, you know, and they're going to come, they're going to go, and we're still going to be here.
So as we move into the last two segments, our first one, we always say to our guests, it's called 30-second timeout, but it's a very loose 30 seconds. There's no official in your timeout telling you to, let's go, coach, let's go. But it's your platform to talk about whatever you want. It could be about yourself, your family, your program, something you want the listeners to know more about. Some guests turn it on Todd and I and ask us questions. But whatever you want, the platform is yours.
That's cool. I would say I had two thoughts. One that just came to mind. I think when you talk about this profession, you can't. The best way to put it in my mind, you can't have work-life balance. It's impossible. But you can have work-life flow, and as a coach, you have to educate the people in your family and the people around you about the ebbs and flows of your year, of your time. And then you have to also recognize that too. There are times where you have to grind for a long time, a lot of hours, a lot of days in a row. But when those times come that you don't, you have to give that time to yourself and to the people who are important to you. So I think work-life flow is kind of how I think about it. And you know, I heard that a few years back, and it's helped me to just become better with life. And then the last thing I would say is, as a profession, I don't think that we support each other enough. I don't think that we support other coaches enough. I don't think that we support education enough. Whatever we think we have in our system that nobody's ever thought of, I promise you stole that from somebody, and that guy, and this is a lot of years in this, that guy that you think is your arch enemy down the street that you're competing against, and you can't stand how he is on the sideline and what he does, this and that. In about 15 years, that dude's going to be your best friend. So I just think we got to keep our profession, and other professions support each other better than ours does. And I would really like to see us do that.
Coach, I do have an interesting follow-up only on that topic alone. To another Illinois coach and myself have talked about this, and it just kind of spurred my thoughts about the college level. Is there anything in the NCAA, any kind of like mentoring program for coaches like yourself that have been a head coach, a coach for a long time? Is there any kind of program that can connect you to a first-year head coach, maybe that doesn't even know you? Because we have definitely, Matt Monroe and myself and a couple other coaches have talked about, even on the high school level, of creating a mentor type program to hopefully keep people in the profession.
Yeah, it's the NABC has just started a program like that at the college level, and I forget what it's called, but it's literally in its infancy. And I'm guilty. I haven't partaken of that yet. I try to help as much as I can. I've been a little busy in the last five months, but yeah, that's I don't know when it was. I was on the racial reconciliation committee with the NABC, after the George Floyd incident, and that was one of the things that came up, is how do we take young coaches? We have all these coaches that are coming up, and they have nobody that's teaching them how to be a head coach. And then if they're a high school coach, they're the most visible person at the high school. If they're a college coach. They're, one of the most visible person at the university. Well, how have we prepared? Lawyers prepare. Jay Billis says it all the time. Lawyers prepare for their profession. They go through this, rigorous training. And you got these head coaches that have never been through anything. They've just chased around players, or, you don't have any formal training. And mentorship is great as well. But how do we start to support each other and understand that we're all going through the same thing? I was a head coach at 25, and I would say that, man, there was I didn't know who to turn to. I had some, but you can't call them every day. And how do I do this and how do I do that? So yeah, it's something we need to improve in our game.
I even think going back to previous conversation, the outside of the game stuff, right? There's so many coaches who know their stuff, but the outside of the game stuff, if you had a mentor, hey, how do you handle this? What's the best way to do it? Right? Because like you said, you kicked your best player out of the practice. Well, maybe now you wouldn't do that. Or if you had a conversation with somebody, you'd be like, okay, maybe we can handle this better. All right. So coach, this is kind of where doesn't go off the rails, but we get a little we just get fun. So quick hitters, random questions, answer it any way you want. Biggest difference besides weather from North Carolina to Wisconsin?
Biggest difference. You took the weather, man. You can't take the weather.
Well, that's obvious. I mean,
I would say the accent. They I got to Wisconsin. I got to get the accent down.
You're not going to go all Brian Kelly on
us.
They
have better beer here. They have better beer.
Oh, there you go.
Yes, they do.
For sure. Yeah. I like that.
All right. So since you're now in Wisconsin, this is very important now. What's your favorite kind of cheese?
Man, I saw that question. I have the soft. I love all kinds of cheese. So I love Wisconsin, but I have the softest answer. I really like brie, and I have some. You can go spicy with it. You can have it plain. You can go sweet with the brie. You can heat it up. I just think that it's got a lot of function to it.
You went brie analytics right there. That was awesome.
That's right. You did.
Brie analytics with the brie.
Yeah. All right. I mean, anybody who's lived in warm weather, that's probably an easy question, but 90 degrees or snow?
Oh, 90. I'm from the South. 90 degrees.
Yeah, I was gonna say, right. Yeah, that's the easy one, right? You've experienced snow, right? Like, have you been in a place where?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I grew up until high school, and my family really is from the mountains in Virginia.
Okay.
Appalachian Trail, Blue Ridge Mountains. So yeah. I know snow.
He might not experience Wisconsin snow yet, though.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, 3 years at Marquette.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you were at Marquette. Yeah, you know that.
I forgot about it though. I will tell you a story. We got off the plane. Marquette, they fly private jets and all that. It's really fancy. So we got off the plane one night. It's like 2 a.m. and the runway's all icy. And I stepped up to the steps to go down, and that scene where Rocky shows up in Russia, and I was like, this is just like that scene in Rocky. Like, where's it's not Mick. Who's the uncle?
Yeah, the trainer. I know what you're talking.
Not so bad. Ain't so bad.
Carrying logs over your head. You're good. Yeah.
All right. So for you, we were talking to you off the air a little bit about, your 5 children. What's your favorite thing to do? Maybe get away from the game. Favorite thing to do with your kids?
Favorite thing might not be their favorite thing, but I love to be outside. So I love to hike and I love to go camping. I tell them that we're going to go take a tree bath. So we, they want to play 2K, and I'm talking about tree baths.
Yeah.
I do love to be outside, and I grew up outside. So.
I was going to say the inner Appalachian just came out and coach just now.
Yeah. I love the trail.
All right. Netflix or Hulu?
I've never experienced Hulu a whole lot, but man, I gave my mother my Netflix login, and now the only thing that pops up is a romance movie. So
You can't even find what you're looking for on there anymore, can you?
No, I can't even. What is my mama looking at? I don't know what to think.
Well, that's like
No, I would say I'd say Netflix. I don't know.
that's like
Not a right or wrong answer, right?
no. I let my mom and sister use my Amazon Prime, and there is a whole lot of things that I don't know what's going on anymore. So
Some mistakes just keep giving.
yeah. All right. So last one. Maybe and it could be your D1 experience, D2, your experience as a player, your favorite arena that you've played in, coached in as a visitor.
Man, that's there's a lot of them. I love Madison Square Garden. I think that would be number one. When you come into Madison Square Garden, you get on this huge elevator. You can put the whole team on it. And I found out later it's that big because they had to get the elephants. Madison Square Garden would have Barnum and Bailey for like months at a time, and they had to be able to get the elephants on the freight elevator. You go up this elevator, and then you see all the people who have played or performed there. It's all over the walls. We play here in Milwaukee in the old Mecca. That's our arena downtown. It's now Panther Arena. So I'm trying to get the city to do that here because it's really the same people who played and performed in Madison Square Garden, played and performed in the Mecca. From Kareem to Billy Joel, name it, Beatles. So I'm trying to do that. And then the other one I would say is most unique. When you walk in at Notre Dame, everyone that you pass says, "Hello, welcome to Notre Dame," which is a little freaky after a while.
Like a mind trick, right?
Yeah, Jedi mind trick. Yeah, but it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. I would say those two places.
All right, I'm gonna add one. I just popped up with this. What was your go-to move in your playing days? What was your go-to move? Like if you're going out to play rec ball right now, you're playing a pickup game against some of the coaches. What's your go-to move?
Yeah, so I was one of those guys that right-handed but loved to go left. So I would say left hand in and out because I would slide and shoot it, or I could cross you over with it. So I'd say left hand in and out. That was my go-to.
Well, Coach, we can't thank you enough. This is an awesome episode.
This was fun.
It was so much fun. It's great to after hearing you at the IBCA and then getting to follow up with you. A lot of awesome stuff. We can't thank you enough and appreciate it so much for joining us tonight.
No, I appreciate you guys having me, and thanks for what you're doing for coaches. It's big. It's big.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the After the Timeout podcast in concert with the Illinois Basketball Coaches Association. Please remember to give us a 5-star rating wherever you may listen. For more show content and upcoming episodes, follow us on Twitter at After the Timeout and subscribe to our podcast for upcoming episodes. Thank you for listening.